Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Policy and Management Subcommittee meeting of April 23rd, 2026. I'll call this meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. I'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any public comments? There's no one here. All right. HR Director, will you take over?
Thank you, Mr. Fallsgraf. I appreciate that. So we have several policies or regulations that we're going to be going over tonight. First one is policy 6146.4, which is differential graduation and competency standards for students with disability. The last time the district updated was in June of 2005. The new policy came out February of this year from CSBA. The changes, and actually it's parts that have been actually added to what the previous policy was. So it says that the board recognizes that students with disability are entitled to a course of study that provides them with a free, appropriate public education, and that modifications to the district's regular course of study may be needed to an individualized basis to provide a free, appropriate public education. And then it talks about exceptions from the district established graduation requirements. And what this is in reference to is if the state is saying that we need to have 3 years of math, but the district decides to say, no, for our students, we're requiring 4 years of math. That's when they're talking about the exceptions because they don't have to do the extra that the board may adopt. So a student with disabilities who enters 9th grade in the year 2022 or 23 or later shall be eligible to be exempted from all coursework and other requirements adopted by the board that are in addition to the statewide course requirements for high school graduation. If the student's IEP provides for both of the following, that the student is eligible to take the alternate assessment, and that the student completes state standards aligned coursework to meet the statewide coursework specified in Ed Code 51225.3. And that Ed code is the one that just states what the minimum requirements from the state is to be able to graduate high school. Then it goes on to say that a student with disability who enters into 10th grade in the year 22 and 23 or later is also eligible for the exemptions if the IEP provides and meets both of the requirements stated above, the 2 bullet points. Any exempted student shall receive a diploma and be eligible to participate in any graduation ceremony and school activity related to graduation in which a student of similar age without a disability would be eligible to participate. Goes on to add that the district's responsibility to provide a free, appropriate public education shall not terminate when a student with a disability who is exempted from the district adopted graduation requirements participates in graduation activities unless the student's IEP team, and it has to include the parent or guardian and student, has determined that the student has completed the high school experience. So if they feel that they don't need to participate, for example, in grad night because they've experienced high school and they're happy, then yes, they don't have, they can be exempted from that also. So those are the new additions that have been added to that one policy. Any questions on that?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that would stand out to the average reasonable person, meaning that this is not intended to be a means of exempting students who may not get the highest scores in order to present the illusion that the entire school's grades are actually higher than they really are.
Correct.
This is about providing faith for the student. And then the last thing, my concern was that if it's determined there's some kind of certificate being given or that everybody on the team except the parent might think that this is a way to move the child out of the school to avoid the extension of services until the student is 22 years old, if that is justified.
No, plus remember, it is a team decision. The parents have to also be have to be in agreement with that. And they would have to also, if they're in agreement, then they could sign the IEP if that's what's being determined. But if not, they can disagree with the IEP.
I think at some point, you may send a note over to the education subcommittee to, at some point, have the entire board have an understanding of how the beyond typical, 12th grade experience into the 22-year-old experience, how that is funded, whether that's through the resource center or if there's anything that would be a financial benefit to try to, I hate to use the word push people out, but I'd be interested in knowing what that funding is. I think someone can expect that that question will be answered when this hits the board for ratification.
Okay, I know that I believe after I presented this here today at the next ed subcommittee, this will be presented by Dr. Chamberlain.
Okay,
Okay, and then after she has presented it, then it would go for first read. But we
I
want to
would
make sure that
appreciate it
we
if the notes from this meeting end up going to Dr. Chamberlain then so that that question could be considered.
Yes, I have it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. The next one is the regulation 6142.7, physical education and activity. This was last adopted in March of 23, and the new one came out in February of 26. Personally, I thought, oh, there's not going to be much change because it's not, that old. A lot of changes have happened with the new one from CSBA. So previously, the previous regulation stated that PE would be provided for a total period of time not less than 200 minutes for every 10 school days for students in grade 1 through 6, and not less than 400 minutes for every 10 school days for students in grades 7 through 12. Previous also stated that during the months of February, March, April, or May, students in grades 5, 7, and 9 would participate in the physical performance testing designated by the State Board of Education. The new regulation gives the definition of extreme conditions, moderate physical activity, physical education, and vigorous physical activity. So extreme weather are occurrences of unusually severe weather conditions, including but not limited to periods of extreme heat, excessive precipitation, and floods that may pose a harm to students. Moderate physical activity is activity that requires sustained rhythmic movements and refers to a level of effort a healthy individual might expend. And it gives examples, like if they're walking briskly, dancing, swimming, or bicycling on a level terrain. Physical activity is movement that is produced by the contraction of skeletal muscles and the substantiality of increases energy expenditure. Physical education, sequential educational program that teaches students to understand and participate in regular physical activity. And then vigorous physical activity, and it gives same thing, the rhythmic movement and everything, but it gives specific examples. And they say, like, if you're jogging, participating in high impact aerobic dancing, swimming continuous laps, or bicycling. And it also says that it will normally increase the heart rate. The new policy, or this is the regulation, states that the PE minutes are exclusive of recess and lunch periods. Previously, it did not state that. Distinguishes that students in grades 7 and 8 attending a middle school or junior high school need to have 400 minutes each 10 school days. And then it provides an alternative schedule that can be used for grades 6 through 12 if the following conditions are met. Students in 6 to receive no less than 400 minutes of instruction each 10 school days for a semester of not fewer than 18 weeks during the regular school year, for a total of 3,600 instructional minutes for the year. Students in grades 7 through 12 They are to receive no less than 800 minutes of instruction for every 10 school days for a semester of not fewer than 18 weeks during the regular school year, for a total of 7,200 instructional minutes for the school year. So if they were to do the 800 minutes for the 18 weeks in one semester, that would satisfy for the entire year, and they would not need to do the physical activity for the second semester, for example. The PE program is aligned with the PE education framework adopted by the State Board of Education in that it provides a sequential, articulated, age-appropriate program. PE program complies with the course of study requirements of high school PE programs. Students are prepared and participate in physical performance testing as specified in the Education Code. If required minutes are not met during any 10-day period due to inclement weather, a school assembly, field trip, student assessment, or other circumstances, the school shall make up those minutes on another day to meet the required minutes, and that is something new. So they want to be sure that doesn't matter what's going on, they still have to meet those minutes. The superintendent or designee shall determine a method to document compliance with the required minutes, and then they give some examples through a master schedule, a belt schedule, a weekly schedule, where teachers are providing what PE instruction is being given to their students. And then any complaint of PE required minutes not being met may be filed through the district's uniform complaint procedure. The complaint that is not satisfied with the district's decision may appeal the decision to the CDE. Then it goes on to discussing monitoring moderate to vigorous physical activity. Superintendent or designee may use the following to monitor the amount of time. Develop methods to estimate the amount of time students spend in moderate to vigorous physical activity and the amount of time students are inactive during PE class. So you actually have to keep track of the time during PE where they're not being active. Provide PE teachers with PD, self-monitoring tools, stopwatches, and/or heart rate monitors to assist them on planning and assessing the level of activity in their classes. Then it goes on to discuss the physical fitness testing. The superintendent or designee may provide a makeup date for students who are unable to take the test based on absence or temporary physical restrictions or limitations. Also, on or before November 1st of each school year, the superintendent or designee may designate an employee to serve as the district's physical fitness test coordinator and notify the test contractor. The coordinator is the liaison between the district and the CD for all matters related to the physical fitness test. The duties include, but are not limited to, responding to correspondence and inquiries from the contractor in a timely manner, determining district and school site test and test materials needed, overseeing the administration of the physical fitness test to the students, and ensuring that all test data are received from the school test site in sufficient time to satisfy the reporting requirements. Students will be provided with their individual results after completing the fitnessgram. Results may be provided in writing or orally, and then students' results shall be provided to the parents or guardians. Aggregate results shall be reported in the annual school accountability report card also, so they need to be in the SARC. Testing variations. All students may be administered the fitnessgram with the following test variations: extra time within a testing day, test directions that are simplified or clarified. All students may have the following test variation if they are regularly used in the classroom, and that's important because these only can be used if they normally have these accommodations in the classroom. Audio amplification equipment, testing for individual students provided that the students are directly supervised by the test examiner. Manually coded English or American Sign Language to present directions for test administration. Students with a physical disability and students who are physically unable to take all of the test shall undergo as much of the test as their physical conditions permit. So I remember when I was responsible for this, the main thing is they have to at least attempt every part of the testing. And we understand that, for example, a child who might be in a wheelchair is not going to be able to do parts of it, but they have to attempt to do some sort of what is required. Students with disabilities may be provided the following accommodations if specified in their IEP or 504 plans. Administration of the test at the most beneficial time of the day to the student after consultation with the test contractor. Administration of the test by a test examiner to the student at home or in the hospital, and any other accommodations specified in the student's IEP or 504 plan. Identified English learners may also be allowed to have the following additional test variations if they're usually used in the classroom. Separate testing with other English learners, provided that the students are directly supervised by the test examiner, and test directions are translated into the primary language, and the opportunity to ask clarifying questions about the test directions in their primary language. So to be sure that they have a clear understanding. There's additional opportunities for physical activity. The superintendent or designee may implement strategies for increasing opportunities for physical activity outside of PE programs, which may include, but again, not limited to, training during recess, lunch, and before and after school, supervisors on methods to engage students in moderate or vigorous physical activity, encouraging teachers to incorporate physical activity into the classroom, establishing extracurricular activities that promote physical activity, such as school clubs, intramural athletic programs, dance performances, community service, special events, and competitions. Incorporating opportunities of physical activity into before or after school programs and or childcare and development programs. Exploring opportunities for joint use of facilities or grounds in order to provide adequate space for students and community members to engage in recreational activities. Developing business partnerships to maximize resources for physical activity, equipment, and programs. And developing programs to encourage and facilitate walking, bicycling, and other active transport to and from school. So those are the changes for the regulations on physical activity. Any questions?
Okay, so I'm wondering what the impetus for this was. Did the gym teacher finally become the superintendent, or what happened here?
That, as far as why the CSBA decided to update the
Yeah, because what it sounds like, we're not really, I'm gonna have a couple questions that we're not really, on one hand, what we're saying is you can get all of your physical activity done in the first semester.
right.
So therefore, you can sit in the couch and eat donuts in the second semester.
If we were to do that. Yes.
That seems counterproductive. It doesn't seem to me that this is really about physical education or having students understand the life experience that we should move. We don't just decide halfway through the year that we're going to, oh, we don't have to do anything now because we did that in semester one.
Continuous exercise.
Right.
But programmatically, don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Fallsgraf, programmatically, schools and school districts typically have it, fall, spring.
Right.
Just like,
Well,
spread
because of
across
the other
academic
classes that
calendar.
they have to take.
Correct,
So yes.
just to
So-
make it about accommodation.
Along those lines, there are some charters that don't have any of this stuff. And my question would be, if you come from a charter that doesn't have a physical education program because they're working out of a mini mall or something that doesn't have a football field and the typical things that come with a normal public school. There was a lot said there. And then they transfer into here. Suddenly they don't meet the graduation requirements. I would be interested to know how we would catch up with that, because the student that I know that faced that dilemma had to go to another charter school and do home study, in which bowling and who knows what would suffice. So it's just kind of this obtuse thing. So I'll ask what the impetus was or what the idea was, because all of a sudden it's like, it almost sounds to me like somebody's decided if we get them off their phones and get them walking around somewhere or doing something. I understand the reason for the definitions, but something else here that it seems like there's a lot of attention being given to, almost like you're going to have an IEP for gym class, I don't see protections in here about the dignity of the individual, which are Title I students, like special education people, English learners. It's almost like you're going to have some segregation to call out the people that don't speak English over here, or the person who has physical challenges. I find that interesting, very interesting. This came from the CSBA.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
And again, remember, this is their recommended language, and then we can change.
I would be
based
interesting
on
if
whatever we don't agree with.
staff were to take a look at what language would be eliminated out of this district's policy first, to have physical education look like physical education, not check the box for one semester and let it go for the next. And then we're talking about how to make sure that English learners and sign language, I know the practicalities of this. And there's almost like if you have a AAC device in your IEP, then you might be able to use the AAC device in your physical. And in my world, swinging does not go well with the AAC device use. So I would tell staff that there's a lot of common sense stuff in here that I don't think needs to call out and differentiate those people that have IEPs, 504s, and second language challenges. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is the policy version of physical education and activity. Again, last time the district adopted was in March of 23, and this is a new one from CSBA as of February of this year. The new,
Is this kind of, excuse me, is this kind of like going through what we just went through, but putting it in how it affects how things are staffed, or
this one does include staffing and so forth, so it does have some things that are very similar to what we just went through the regulation, but then it also speaks about staffing and so forth. Do you want me to just touch on?
yeah, please.
Okay. So let's see, if we go to,
So it looks like the front end of it has a lot to do with stuff that would be in Title IX already.
right.
Okay.
It talks about, supplement PE instruction with additional opportunities, which was touched on in the regulation. It speaks to if there is, if there's a written note from the parents that say that for religious purposes, the student is fasting, then you don't make them, for example, run the mile that day. So you make those adjustments based on that, specifically speaks to that. Talks about the weather and so forth. Okay, so staffing, PE instruction shall be delivered by appropriately credentialed teachers. They may be assisted by IAs, paraprofessionals, and or volunteers. That the PE teacher will be provided with professional development, including classroom management and instruction strategies.
Which is typical for any subject.
Correct.
Okay.
It talks about the physical fitness test, again, the same grades in both. It talks about exemptions that could be provided. So this is where it's a little bit different. So it says the superintendent or designee may grant a student temporary exemption from PE under either of the following conditions. The student is ill or injured and a modified program to meet the student's needs cannot be provided, or the student is enrolled for one half time or less. Now it goes into also 2-year exemptions and permanent. 2-year is with the student's consent, the superintendent or designee may exempt a student from PE courses for any 2 years during grades 10 through 12. And that is provided that the student has satisfactorily met at least 5 of the 6 standards of the fitness gram in 9th grade. So they had to have met the majority of it to be able to receive that exemption. But again, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. do we want them to then, as you said, be able to eat the donuts instead?
Yeah, is this really about fitness or is this about the illusion that we're not letting children become obese by
Correct.
not by taking the role over as a parent while we're at school?
Right. And then from there, it goes on to permanent exemptions. And again, it has to be student is 16 years or older and has been enrolled in grade 10 for 1 or more academic years. Students shall not attend fewer total hours of courses and classes than the student would have attended if enrolled in PE. So even if they're not taking PE, they still have to be at school the same number of minutes as if they were taking the physical education class.
So that would be, sorry, so let's say within the school-wide schedule, that would be, here's an additional elective.
Correct, because you have to provide something in its place.
Right.
It's not that they just get a free period. So we would have to provide another class for them to take if that were to happen.
Just for clarification.
It sounds to me, the way this is worded, permanent exemptions, superintendent or designee may grant a student permanent exemption from PE under any of the following conditions. The student is 16 years or older and has been enrolled in grade 10 for 1 or more academic years. That almost sounds like every 10th grader in the district could exempt out of PE.
Yes,
Yeah,
They-
not big
they-
on that one.
okay.
The student is enrolled as a postgraduate student. I don't understand the tie-in between, again, bunching up all the physical activity, unless the goal here is not really physical activity.
I understand, sir.
And okay, so that meets some title students there. Okay,
All right, then it goes to other exemptions. The superintendent or designee may grant a student an exemption from PE under the following special circumstances. When the student is in any grade between 10th and 12th and excused for up to 24 hours in order to participate in automobile driving training. Okay. The student shall attend a minimum of 7,000 minutes of PE instruction during the school year. When the student is in grades 10 through 12, attends a regional occupational center or program, and because of the travel time involved would experience hardship to attend PE courses. And when the student is in high school and is engaged in a regular school-sponsored interscholastic athletic program carried on wholly or partially after regular school hours.
And that's currently in place as a practice.
Right.
okay, that makes sense, except for the first two, which seem to classify stepping on the gas pedal of an automobile a physical activity.
Program evaluation. The superintendent or designee shall annually report to the board on each school's fitnessgram results for each applicable grade level. Shall also report regarding the number of instructional minutes offered in PE education for each grade level and the number of 2-year and permanent exemptions granted and any other data agreed upon by the board and the superintendent or designee.
That does not sound to me like we need to bring in all of the students with a scale in front of a board meeting. It sounds to me like a standardized report.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on?
No, we're good.
Okay, so then the next one is regulation 5144.1, which is suspension and expulsion and due process. The district last updated in April of 25, and this is brand new, so it's only newer by 8 months. So under acts of which a student, including a student with disabilities, may be suspended or expelled shall only be specified as follows in the additional grounds for. Number 13, because I have a bunch of them listed, but number 13 is a little different. It's committed or attempted to commit a sexual assault as defined in several penal codes. And the following was added. No student may be disciplined prior to finding being made pursuant to the grievance process established by 34 CFR 106.45, which is a section of the U.S. federal regulation that lays out how schools must handle complaints of sexual discrimination, especially sexual harassment, in accordance with AR 5145.71. And then also we have to keep in mind Title IX sexual harassment complaint procedures. The district may conduct a non-discipline removal of a student in emergency situations where there is an immediate threat to the health or safety of any student or other individuals. The other section that was added is final action by the board. The CSBA recommendation added a plan for the student's rehabilitation, which shall include periodic review and a preliminary assessment for readmission at least 45 days before the end of the expulsion term. The plan shall be tailored to the student's needs and address the behavior that led to the expulsion. Plan may be developed in consultation with district staff who have knowledge or special expertise regarding the student and include recommendations for improved academic performance, tutoring, special education assessments, job training, counseling, employment, community service, or other rehabilitative programs. The board shall assist the student in locating accessible opportunities that are necessary to complete the requirements of the student's plan for rehabilitation, included but not limited to opportunities for counseling and community service. The board shall require the student or the student's parents and guardians to pay for any cost of services the board determines to be necessary for the student to complete the student's plan of rehabilitation.
What I was going to mention, thank you, Ms. Erdrich. It's reassuring to see that the language, of course, it's an update, but this is something that, we have currently in practice where there's a periodic review of the rehabilitation plan with said student, parent, guardian, and then the preliminary assessment for readmission earlier than coming up to the last day or last week
Right.
or, prior to the, semester commencing. So this is reassuring to actually see that we currently have these practices in place. Just
Yeah.
make that comment.
Okay. I see this differently.
Mhm.
First up, we know the unspoken is, and this creates a world of contention, is someone will do something. And we don't run around and tell everybody, oh, this kid has an IEP, here are the terms. I mean, sometimes IEPs and packets of confidential information appear on a block wall out in the community, short of those circumstances, illegal circumstances. People become confused as to why someone who does something in the school that the average student would do stays in school. And so basically that creates a situation where the staff member is saying, well, there are extenuating circumstances. I think even saying that is a violation of law. So you have groups of parents that are saying that kid shouldn't be here. Why are they here? And staff gets caught in the middle of that. And then all of a sudden now it's very convenient that the district may conduct a non-discipline removal of a student when there's an immediate threat to the health or safety of any student or individual. So what that does, stacked onto the first issue, is basically puts staff at the school coming to the superintendent's office and saying, find a reason to get this person out of here because we are getting killed by the crowd. That's the reality of this policy. There's also the final action to the board. So what this serves to do is it serves to vilify the superintendent's office. It serves to vilify the board as a group. It doesn't matter who the individuals are, because we're back here in this room discussing this with a lawyer and trying to protect the rights of a person and basically saying that the reason they're doing this is something that the special education program has failed to, number one, identify, or two, deal with. That puts the district in an extreme position of liability. It puts other students at risk. And so if I'm a parent who has a child that runs across any of this, my first thing is this is a child find failure and a lack of services. Now my child is being harassed or worse by the people who don't understand the rights that come with special education, IEPs, 504s. It actually favors calling an emergency IEP to figure out that, oh, this kid did this because there's a reason. It just puts everyone in a terrible position. I wish I knew what the right thing to do. I would suggest that within the special education training that comes out of the SELPA,
Mhm.
that it's documented that people understand what child find is and that staff has had training, but that training should not be a check the box like having gym class half the year and letting it go the rest of the year. So this is a very delicate situation. At the end, what it's saying is that the CSBA recommendation, I don't know what the teachers union would think of this. Have you any input on this from the staff? Because it's basically saying the school psychologist and that group of people are going to create a plan that addresses someone's tendency to be sexually deviant. I don't know what that looks like.
Well, the practice, the expulsion hearing officer, the director of student services, pupil services, really works in conjunction with community resources that are accessible for the parent and the student that ties into the misbehavior or the behavior that needs to be corrected for rehabilitation. So, yes, there could be a collaboration with staff. But more so, it's really tapping into the resources that we have within reach, and for the families to tap into those resources. And that becomes their prerogative to pursue, but we will go ahead and do periodic, check-ins and assess, how is that progress going. Um, but but not necessarily really kind of tapping into, let's say, teacher resources or practice, but more of, what do we have as a district as resources to provide the student and the family in terms of rehabilitation and course correction.
It sounds to me, based on what you just said, that a district that has a progressive counseling program and a social and mental health program that's in place,
Mhm.
instead of something that's reactive, where you're calling the county health department and saying, oh, we've got this over here, and depending on them to fix it when it's too late, that having healthy discussions about this kind of thing without handing out, I'm going to get in trouble here, but we live in a cowboy community. Let's understand that. Um, that having the resources in place of mental health counseling and all those kinds of things, and the expectation that we don't harass people sexually or elsewise, to give ourselves position within the student body and bully and all that kind of thing. I think this all wraps up, but I do need to call attention to the fact that I would like a simple English characterization of what this means, because it almost seems that the students' needs, this is the one that would be the aggressor, whether they
Typically.
realize that they're the aggressor or not, or their mental capacity allows for that. But it almost reads that there's going to be a lot of attention going on to someone who is the person with the problem and not so much support to those that aren't the problem. Remember, everyone out there, as you're watching this, this is an indicator of some of the challenges of things that you will face as a board member in closed session. You may have other parents coming to you and saying, I don't know why this is happening. And then you will have occasionally people who get on the board that don't understand what's happening and how sensitive this can be to the point of affecting your private life with the wrong move. When this is read, Superintendent, make a note, please, about the progressive mental health and counseling program that you have here in place. And we're not trying to find somebody after the fact. I think that is short of the touchy-feely aspect of our programs like this. I think this is an example of how important they are to have in place and ongoing rather than waiting for things to ramp up. Go ahead.
It's noted, yeah, and I agree. It's the preventative measures so that we don't get to this situation with our students. That's ideal.
There is no amount of school board, superintendent, or staff activity can replace parenting.
Next, it goes on to discuss placement during expulsion. The board shall receive notification from the county superintendent of schools if at any time during the expulsion term for any reason, the county superintendent is unable to serve the student expelled by the district. Upon notification, the board shall ensure that another educational program is provided to the student for the duration of the expulsion order, which may include entering into an agreement with a county superintendent in another county to provide education services for the district's expelled students. Upon the change of a student's eligibility for an educational program or at the request of the student's parent or guardian, the board shall review with the student and the student's parent or guardian the educational options for expelled students is outlined in the plan to provide educational services to the student who's been.
That's a very fancy way of saying I get a private psychologist to change my assessment, my overall assessment of the student to play dodgeball with the expulsion. I'll call attention to that during the discussion.
Thank you, sir. And then the last thing it touches on is the readmission after expulsion. As part of the review process, the board shall indicate whether the student has access to the necessary resources to complete the student's rehabilitation plan. A rehabilitation plan that is not completed due to financial or transportation barriers or a lack of vehicle opportunities to complete a term of the rehabilitation plan shall not be a basis to deny the readmission of a student.
Okay, I need everyone to understand, our staff did not write this.
No.
But we go to the page before that, it says the board shall require the student or the student's parent, guardians to pay for any costs or services the board determines. I'm not in, I can't barely get a pair of socks to match each other in the morning, much less determine what is necessary to rehabilitate someone who has a problem with sexual assault. So it says, but in order to be considered for readmittance, the student has to complete a plan of rehabilitation. And then on the next page, about 850 words later, that the board, if in the event that the student could not complete due to financial transportation barriers or the gas of price being what it is, price of gas, excuse me, or lack of a vehicle, I can just be forced to readmit someone because the car was broke down. This is ridiculous at best.
Just to echo, what Mr. Falsgraf mentioned, I see this language in terms of readmission after expulsion to be somewhat problematic. Many times you have in rehabilitation plans, generally speaking, of course, you have counseling for rehabilitation. You kind of there's an emphasis in terms of what types of behaviors to work on and et cetera. And if it's not a virtual counseling and it's, there's always transportation that's involved. Sometimes there's health insurance issues and so forth, so on, and which we can respect that. But along the lines of not completed due to financial transportation barriers, it's not a basis, shall not be a basis to deny readmission of a student. That's important. That's important to state because of the fact that you know, it's the onus really falls on the student and the family to really work towards getting them back on track, if you will. And without some of these barriers in place as a readmission problem.
Mhm.
I would suggest that there's language that kind of addresses that if we're going to adopt this at all. Because right down after that, it says the board may deny readmission only if it finds the student either has not substantially satisfied the conditions, which is back to the car being broke down. This is a loop of failure is all this is.
Yes, it basically contradicts itself.
Mhm.
Yes. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, there's two reasons you can deny. One of them is that they haven't satisfied the conditions of the rehabilitation plan despite having access to the necessary resources and viable opportunities to complete the rehabilitation plan. So that one has nothing to do with the transportation. That one is they had those opportunities, but still did not.
So I guess I would have to go out and check the oil in their car every day as a board member.
You might have to, sir.
Okay.
And then that the student continues to exhibit documented behaviors that the student was expelled for, or is documented to have committed one or more new acts during the expulsion term that would make the student eligible for another expulsion.
So do we have a priority list of who those victims might be before we finally get to victim 13, which is the magic number that says you don't do that here? That was a rhetorical question. Yeah, I'm not big on that either. This should be pretty spicy. Should I call the state and have them on the line like we did that one time, or that I did the one time?
And then to say that they can't communicate during the meeting anyways.
Right. You have a great memory. HR people usually do. That's been
Alex,
an
you'll patch them in.
inconvenience
You'll patch
to me. Person.
That's part of HR. You gotta remember those things. Okay, so, and this is the last one. I see you looking at the time. Okay, so this is now the policy for suspension and expulsion. So the new policy added that off-campus behavior may result in discipline when it disrupts district programs and activities or as otherwise prohibited by law, board policy, or administrative regulations.
That's great. So something under the bleacher at the Antelope Valley Fair and Alfalfa Festival could somehow affect our campus. That's great. I love that. Not. Go ahead.
Authority to expel. On a case-by-case basis, a student board member may make restorative justice recommendations to the board regarding specific expulsion matters in accordance with the board bylaw 9150, which is student board members. Bylaw 9150 was last updated and adopted by the board, just so that you know, in February of 22. If you'd like, I can check this with CSBA to see if there's a new updated bylaw.
So our board member, our student board member, who in the absence of being on the board being here, you notice that I will bring the board member in here. So on a case-by-case basis, determined by whether we like the person or don't. You didn't do that to that person, but you chose this person. How many letters I have on my letterman's jacket or how many I don't. How many times I've been expelled, whether my parent is popular in the community. Is that case? I'm interested in seeing the definition of case by case for this policy. A student board member is suddenly, that's what they
And they-
need in their life when they're getting ready to go to college. This is great.
And they gave no further explanation to that. That's all they said.
Yeah,
in the-
we need to kind of expand on this and look in more detail, because this could be problematic whichever way you look at it. Not to say the restorative justice
Right, but
practice in of itself, because
Yeah.
there is rehabilitation there,
Mhm.
but as far as the, you know, case by case, individual case, and to what extent, you know, do they have that information? Because
I
it's
know that
new
staff in the entire area has a plethora of time available in all cases to pay attention to whatever this might be and give it all their attention. This is, okay, I think everybody understands. I'm not a big fan of this. Not a big fan. It's like, who can we blame this? Oh, the student board member, let's dump it on them on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, I honestly, I was surprised to see that
Mhm.
myself. On
I
there.
didn't
agree.
win Miss Acton and lost to that person, so now I am in control of your future. Okay. So I covered Letterman's jackets and Miss Acton, Crown Prince of Acton. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, no, this is just bizarre. Now we're gonna plan for the rehabilitation.
now we're gonna-
Go ahead.
At the time of the expulsion order, the board shall recommend a plan for the student's rehabilitation in accordance with the proposed administrative regulation. It just.
The board.
Yes,
So now it's back in here.
yes, sir.
So we dumped it on the student rep. Now you're gonna have me, who was raised by a maximum security prison guard stepfather. I am going to put the plan together. That's awesome.
It's a little contradictory, right? Board shall recommend a plan for students' rehabilitation, but earlier on, it's indicating the district shall take a look at and plan for resources and et cetera, et cetera. I could see where the plan is being presented, the rehabilitation
board.
plan, and if there's any input by, with all due respect to, by board members, that could be, but the board shall recommend a plan. And it says that the board
Is
is
developing.
developing a plan.
That's how I would read it also. Yeah.
Not that our board cannot develop a plan because they're very skilled, but I'm just saying that,
We're not skilled.
I'm just saying that there's contradictory language, just
Yeah.
from my preliminary read.
100%, yes. So, okay.
Please go on with the next one. I've been waiting for this.
Oh. Maintenance and monitoring of outcome data. The superintendent or designee shall maintain outcome data related to student suspensions and expulsions, including but not limited to the number of students recommended for expulsion.
Hang on, can you read that part again?
The superintendent or designee shall maintain outcome data related to student suspensions and expulsions, including but not limited to.
This is the one. Yell it out. I will. The number of students recommended for expulsion. So if I think that, you know what, half the school is recommended for expulsion, I really don't think we need to keep much data on this. The grounds for each recommended expulsion. Well, we got too many sticking gum in people's hair. And then all the others, putting cigarettes on George Washington's picture. I could go on and on, but I won't give you any more ideas. The actions taken by the board.
But currently, I mean, school districts do, I mean, through our student information system, we pull the data. I mean, it's CalPADS related too,
Yes.
number of expulsions,
Reported
number of
to CalPADS.
suspensions, through our SIS, those recommended for expulsion. So I think this is a little bit reductive in the sense because it's already taking place, at least bullets number 1 and 2.
Right, which, because like you said, Dr. Sagin, that information is provided to CalPADS. And then that's where the CDE and Data Quest, when they come up with the, the.
Ordinance.
No, California dashboard.
Dashboard.
Thank you, the dashboard. That's where they get the information
Right.
from. And even if the student ends up not being expelled, but they were in the process, that's still documented because they were suspended for that period of time. And as the suspension is reported to CalPADS, you have to give the reason for the suspension. So this information is basically being reported out to
Yeah.
the state anyway.
Yes, it's being
Yes.
maintained. That's just.
Yes.
The way I read this is how many expulsions is okay? One is too many, right? Let's go with that.
Sure.
Ideally, on your school report that the realtors like to look at, how many expulsions do they want to see? 0. Yeah. So the number of students, this of course is up to the superintendent. The superintendent can decide 1 is too many. So we just won't keep data because it's based on the number of students. Guys out there, this is government at work, I'm sorry. And having me do the work is not helping. But I need you to understand, our superintendent was not brought in here because he was a track star or he's built a lot of buildings. he was brought in here for this kind of stuff in his career, including his time at the Los Angeles County Office of Education, was focusing on the title students. So at-risk people, special education, all those kind of people. And if he's sitting here and being kind about this language, I would say that you have an above average understanding of this topic material. And it's funny to me when you're smiling like you're holding back a
No, I'm just,
Sam Blackwell.
agreement.
Make sure you catch that one. Thank you. Okay.
I concur with Mr. Parker. I think we have a great suspension.
it's very kind.
With
Mr. Alex,
experience in this area, okay.
we have we have
So
good people.
I'll finish reading this. The actions taken by the board, including whether the student was subsequently expelled or whether the expulsion order was suspended. So in my world, what that means is my friend's kid who could get a scholarship doesn't need to be expelled because I'm going to ignore the superintendent because I like to have a beer in the swamp cooler garage with my friend. The types of referral made after each expulsion, the disposition of the students after the expulsion. Oh boy, the disposition of a student. I'm so happy that I got expelled and I have some kind of assault on my record. I guess that might make some people upset. I'm not sure. The average length of the expulsion terms. So as a board member, can I give someone, if I can get 3 votes out of 5, I can control the expulsion period? Please
Correct.
tell me no.
Well, you can, it has to be reported out upon, action taken at close, whether or not a student will be expelled and what would the terms be.
So, but the question is, I could pick 5 years for one kid and 10 days for my own if I can get on the board. And
Good point. It's actually the extent to which expulsion orders are in place are typically 1 academic calendar, or you could look at it as 2 semesters.
so there are actually laws about
Yes.
this. Imagine that. Okay. So for any expulsion that involves possession of firearm, you shall include the name of the school and the type of firearm involved. And I haven't seen in this district that people who bring dope to school and handguns and explosives, that the community is really on the prodigal son plan where it's open arms, come on back. I think the bigger problem is how does the board prove to the community that there's been forward progress made? Because this is the kind of issue that ruins a life. And yeah, totally. Okay. So I very much appreciate the creativity you've used today to come up with topics.
You're welcome, sir.
With the help of CSBA.
Yes,
Yes.
just trying to get through the ones that have most recently been updated, so we can decide whether we want to
So
update. or
if I suspend you until I think that these are kind of leveled back out, it's ridiculous. Okay. God bless staff.
5 day suspension max.
I could take a little bit. So that is all I have for you today, Mr. Fallsrath.
Oh, how sad. Okay, that said, I think we are done with this meeting and we will adjourn at
6:02.
6:02. Everyone, thank you for participating.